Welcome to the Two Stewards Show. A smart man named Albert Einstein once said, "If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions." What Einstein failed to realize is that if you spend the full 60 minutes talking about the problem, the solutions discover themselves. We call it the podcast theory of solution discovery. So now, the real problem then becomes not solving problems, but rather picking which problems to solve. We call this the theory of problem selection. And sadly, there again, Einstein picked relativity, which apparently wasn't the right problem to solve because after solving it, we still have problems today. After all, Einstein is not known for his theories on picking the right problem, but more for solving less relevant ones. Today, we are talking to Joe Bryan. Joe has put his finger on which problem needs to be solved. Why is society deteriorating? Why does it feel like things are getting harder? Why do you have no control? To get the most out of this episode, first go and watch Joe's video titled, "What's the Problem?" You can find the link in the show notes below. Sadly, Joe's video is only 39 minutes long, so we had to talk about the problem for at least another 21 minutes before the solution became evident. To get in touch with the show, email us at hello@twostewards.ca. If you found this episode as eye-opening as we did, share it with someone. Remember, this show is not financial advice, but is valuable for listening amusement purposes. And now, the problem defined. All right, Joe Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
So our mission is to try and help people steward their wealth wisely. And it's good to have you. Like, you're here, I think, basically because of the power of a story. Like, you've, I guess, created this video. It's become a little bit of a sensation on YouTube and circulated around, called "What's the Problem?" So we saw this video a couple months back. I don't know when you produced it, but
Back in
it's been
in January
this year. Yeah. Okay. So it hasn't been too long, but it's become a bit of a sensation describing kind of what is the problem with our world today, I guess the money system. And it's a perfect fit for our audience. So welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks. It's great to have the opportunity to bring the topic of discussion to your primarily Canadian audience, because I don't get to speak to Canadians very much, but everybody everywhere needs to understand the problem, because we're all faced with exactly the same thing, and it's the only thing we're all on the same team for.
Across the world. Well, so I just think many people have a feeling that things aren't right, but you kind of put some of those feelings into words, and maybe that's what's resonated with people. So I don't know if you kind of want to walk us through, like, how did you come up with this idea to share this problem video, and walk us through kind of its origin?
Well, there's a word we haven't mentioned so far, which probably I'll leave a little bit longer. But there is something I'm very passionate about, which I consider to be, outside of family, the most important thing in the world, and that is fixing the money, because the money is broken for everybody and it's destroying everything. Now that feeling that you mentioned there, Brent, I think everybody has it to a greater or lesser degree. Like they feel, they can just sense things crumbling and not moving forward, despite the fact that we're becoming ever more inventive and have more and more technology. It's like society is deteriorating, quality is deteriorating, the surface area of problems is just constantly expanding. But no one really knows why. It's like, why do we have just increasing instability everywhere, increasing strife, lower quality life, despite all these, technological advances? It's because that's the way it's designed. And the way it's designed is because the money's corrupted. And everything in your life, all of these things are just downstream of the fact that the money is corrupted. Now that's like a very general statement, but the video itself is just a story. And when you're thinking about trying to go from a world where you have lots of touch points with lots of problems, and then you're trying to extrapolate where they all came from, that's extremely hard. Right? Because the problems may be one step away, they may be 2, 3, 4, 5 steps away from the problem, and therefore, like, how can you interpolate where they came from? That becomes very, very hard. But if somebody gives you a map and says, like, imagine you started here, and this is the scenario, and then this decision was made, and then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and suddenly you see all the problems. It then becomes very clear what the cause was. It's like you run it one way, it's super easy. You run it the other way, it's incredibly hard. And so the story is just running it the right way. It's starting at that blank sheet of paper with people on an island, and then people just being humans. And every step as you walk through this story, you're like, well, of course that's obviously true. Of course that's obviously true. Of course that's obviously true. That's exactly what I would do. Exactly what would happen. Like, so it's a series of small steps, none of which are controversial, and everyone agrees with, and then you end up with a world like today. And it's very clear where all the problems came from. It's because the money's broken. Whereas on the other half of the island, there's two halves. The other half of the island, they don't have corruptible money. And you end up with a world that actually works, where the productivity and the ingenuity of civilization accrues to the population through the money. And when you do that, it raises the quality of life for everybody. It protects human rights, it accelerates sovereignty, it increases time preference. I care about 10 years now, not 10 days. And it fixes society. And it could not be clearer watching this video about where we are and where we could be if we just fixed one thing. And so that's the essence of it.
So, okay, so your contention then. So I'm a little more cynical on human nature. Let's say that. And now as Bitcoiners, we agree, like, we have to fix the money because it is. You can see where the problems that it causes, and maybe I'll get you to expound a little bit on some of the second and third order things for our audience in a second. But do you think in this utopian side of the island there would be no problems? Is that what you're saying?
No,
would it be?
of course.
Okay. I just want to flesh that out.
Humans are humans, Mark. There's always going to be problems.
Okay.
But I'm not going to spend time talking about. Somebody will always try and cheat the system somehow.
Yeah.
But when you have sound money, when you have perfect money, they get found out. And so the perfect money does not require human perfection. It just aligns incentives in a way that human imperfection gradually gets eroded. Right? You're incentivized to. Perfect money in a free market means everybody working in their own self-interest for the benefit of everybody else. And that's it. And this is capitalism. Right? We don't live in capitalism. We don't have capitalism anymore. And we certainly don't have good money. Now, you can have capitalism with corruptible money, in which case it rapidly goes away from being capitalism into crony corporatism, which is where we are today. But it's the combination of the two. It's basically what happens when you just leave people alone and you give them proper money. Then you get human flourishing. And this is just so blindingly obvious when you watch the video. It's just so blindingly obvious. It's like, well, okay, well, if that's the case, how the hell have we ended up in the situation we've ended up no, it's because the money's broken. And because the money's broken, the free market gets destroyed and we all get swallowed by the state. Until things end in some horrible way, and one of probably a long list of different outcomes. But we're all rapidly hurtling towards one of those outcomes. And you can feel it. Everybody listening can feel it. Like, Canada's going off a cliff. The UK is going off a cliff. Right? It's because the money's broken. So let's just fix the money.
So
that's my whole contention. So what I'm not doing, this is a Bitcoin video without mentioning the word Bitcoin until right at the end, because it's not about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the solution. But it's like, people listening will, I'm sure, have heard you talk about Bitcoin before, but maybe don't have that skeletal mental framework to understand where Bitcoin fits into their worldview. So it's like it's a solution without a problem. Right? But if you watch this video, you fully understand the problem. You now have a skeletal mental framework, and it's like Bitcoin fits there because it fixes it all. And then you come out the other end, and what's the point of Bitcoin? It's to separate money and state. That's it.
So how do you draw that line between, I don't know, social decline? You talked about Canada, the UK, and I'd like to think we're a few years behind the UK. We have a little more time from my observation. But I mean, yeah, definitely there's social unrest. There's so many social problems. And, if you talk to politicians, if you talk to a lot of people, they have ideas on how to fix it, right? Maybe we need, better hate speech laws, or on one side. On the other side, we need to stop immigration. We need to, there's all kinds of things that, whether it's conservatives or reform will come out with as a platform. Obviously, nobody ever talks about fixing the money, as far as I know. But how do you, if you're talking to somebody and they're saying I don't know, what's wrong in the UK, but we got to fix it. And, if you're talking about the price of food, for example, I was looking at some snacks the other day, and like $7 for a little bag of something. I don't need it that bad. For I don't know if you could tell, I'm not the slimmest guy. For me, that's quite a stretch. So maybe this is the push I need. But
silver lining, Mark.
So for on the economic side, I think it's a little easier to show. Food costs more, rent costs more. Okay, the money. But when it comes to social unrest or just instability, how do you tell people well, actually, at the root of it, it's money? I know it's not one step, but
yeah. Well, as far as politicians go, I'll answer it in several layers. The political cycle has an end date, and politicians care about getting elected and getting re-elected. And it's much easier to do that if you just give away free money. And so you cannot, having the political class have access to the big red button to allow them to print as much money as possible, inevitably leads to them pressing the big red button and printing a load of money and destroying the currency. So that's the comment on the political side. Secondly, if you guys know Larry Lepage, but I love a quote of Larry's, which is listening to politicians is like listening to someone argue over the color of the curtains while the house is on fire. It's it doesn't matter. All these things you're talking about, they don't matter. They're downstream of the problems. Even if you fix them, you're not going to fix it. They're just going to reoccur because it's not fixing the problem. So you need to fix the problem, and all the consequences will resolve themselves. So that's that point. On the social decline, it all stems from theft of your life. Because if you have a money that somebody else can print for free, that you have to work for, it corrupts everything. And let's just leave aside the corruption of the money from a control perspective, like your inability to actually control the money yourself, which will be very familiar with, using the banking system in Canada, right? The money in the bank is not yours, and it's not really money. But let's assume it was, right? Let's assume you actually did have control of it. The fact that you have to go out to work for something that someone else can create for free is wrong. And everybody can agree with that. Right? But when somebody creates it for free, they're stealing your life. Because you're expending your energy, your time and effort, and you're making an economic contribution to somebody else in some form, and they're rewarding you with Canadian dollars. But if the banking system, ultimately the government, is able to expand its balance sheet by printing as many Canadian dollars as it wants, the more they bring into existence relative to the amount of goods and services that exist, they're reducing the purchasing power of the thing you worked for. So they're stealing your money, and therefore they're stealing your life. Because that represents your effort. And that's at the root of everything. And so our entire economic framework is based on the fact that the government can print for free what you have to work for, and that they justify the fact that they do this. Well, firstly, they obfuscate that they do this by wrapping it in lots of complex language like quantitative easing and these sorts of things. They print it. They don't have to print it physically, so there's no wheelbarrows full of cash. It's just a press of a keyboard now. Right? So you don't even see it. You feel it in the shops. You feel it everywhere. You see it through inflation. But this is where inflation comes from, just printing money. We all know this. We get taught this in school about, after the First World War. Like, this is just the same thing. It's just the same thing, but they're printing money at a slower rate. But what happens is you go and work for the money. You put the money in the bank. In a year's time, you realize it's decayed. Even if you've earned a bit of interest, it buys less next year. So the money is melting. And so everybody listening knows the money is broken, because they know they can't put it in the bank and it retain the economic energy they put into creating it or earning it. Right? So they're being stolen from. Their life is being stolen. You now have to work for longer, work harder, just to maintain the same level of purchasing power for the state. Right? This is just wrong. Absolutely wrong. But then think about what that means for your decision making. This is why the house prices in Canada are insane. Because you put the money in the bank, as soon as you accrue some savings, you know you can't keep it in the bank, protect the purchasing power. So what do? You go and buy a rental property. Right? And you take out some debt as well, because then you can maximize the rental income, and then you expand it to a portfolio. It's because the money's broken. Like, if the money wasn't melting, you wouldn't do it. If the money was in the bank and the productivity of society was accruing to the money, which is what should happen over time, and I can explain why that's the case in a minute, it changes everything. And so even if we just think about a thought experiment here, like if I said to you, Mark, like, it'll give you $1,000, you've got to keep it in the bank for 10 years. Like, the purchasing power of that is going to be like half in 10 years' time. Okay. So what do? You do something with it. You either speculate with assets or you spend it. What if I said it's going to halve in a year, not 10 years? You spend it faster, or you invest it faster. What if I said a month, or a week, or a day, or an hour? Does your decision making improve or deteriorate as I change the time frame? It deteriorates massively. If I give it to you today and it's worth half tomorrow, you spend it on anything, right? This is not a good, productive decision that you're going to make. And so how can that be any good for society? It can't be good at all, because all your decision making is compromised. Whereas instead, if I said to you, here's some money, you can put it in the bank and it's going to increase in purchasing power over time, do you think you make better or worse decisions when it comes to investing or spending? you absolutely make better decisions because you're not forced into something because you're going to lose it. You make a decision to invest productively because you expect a return on that money that outstrips the productivity gains that's accruing to the money from society, right? And you don't waste it. You don't waste it on nonsense spending because it's going to buy more in the future than it does today. So your quality of decision making gets increased, right? And then think about how that compounds through time. It means stuff that currently gets funded that should never get funded doesn't get funded. So you destroy less good capital. You prioritize quality and need over want and short-termism. The whole mindset of society goes to long-termism again. When you go and do a day's work, you can save it. So people can accrue savings. They don't have to speculate. And you think about, I know you guys are in real estate as well, but if your money was going up in value by keeping it in the bank, you wouldn't buy the houses anymore. So what would happen? The house prices would return to normal. And so you could buy a house again on one salary and have a family and have children. It normalizes society because it removes the monetary premium that is in everything because the money is broken. A house is a liability. Anyone who's owned a house knows it's a pain, right? Stuff breaks. You've got to fix it. Like, you've got to repaint it, like re-roof it, like all of these things. It costs money. It's not a productive asset. So, but we're now in a situation in the West where housing is considered like a primary asset that we store our wealth in. It's bonkers, absolutely bonkers. Because we are forced to take out big mortgages to buy a house because the money's broken, means that we're then tied to servicing debt on an unproductive asset for our entire lives. So you have to work, you both have to work. Fewer children, more stress, trapped in doing stuff you don't want, to pay interest on money created for free by the bank. The money didn't even exist before you asked to borrow it. They print it for free, you pay them interest, and then you spend your whole life paying off something which every chance the state steals off you at some point in the next 30 or 40 years. It's a disaster, an absolute disaster. Whereas in the alternative case, your money starts going up in value. You don't buy the houses or you sell the houses, they return to normal. You can buy a house on one salary, have a family, and all your efforts don't go to paying the mortgage. You accrue some savings. And with those savings, you build businesses, right? You create more productivity. Like, Bitcoin just fixes everything, right? And I realize that's a super long answer to the question that you asked, but I hope it touches on a number of consequences downstream of the money itself being broken, but hopefully in a way that everybody recognizes to be absolutely true.
No, that's yeah. I was hoping you would tease that out because it's not a straight line, right? But it's a jagged line, and it gets there. I think you explained that beautifully. Now, you're making it sound very simple, Joe. Right? Like, the money's broken. Let's fix it. And so, the pushback is that, like, it's not, like, money isn't that simple, Joe. I don't think you really understand how money works. And, here in Canada, our new plan is to spend less and invest more. That's the government line. So they're going to separate the capital from the operating budgets. And so massive deficits on the capital side, because those are investments, and we know that investments are good. And then, we're going to rein in our spending on the operating side. So that's the latest wool to be pulled over the eyes. But I just want to cover your background quickly, just because I'm sure there's people saying, like, they could say it about me and Brent. We're a couple of schmoes who, invest in real estate and dabble in this and that. And we read books. We don't really understand how money works. But you're training. So you, despite being a northerner, you somehow got into Oxford.
Yeah, I was totally surprised.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. And if you're Canadian, you won't get that, but it's a little bit like, I don't know, Newfies and the rest of Canada. Excuse me. Anyways, you went to Oxford, and what did you study there? Because I don't really even understand.
I did physics.
Okay, physics, and then you specialized in monetary. What was the?
No. Well, I did a module of financial physics, which I didn't know what I wanted to do as a career. I knew I just enjoyed doing physics, and so I went there, and then during my undergraduate, came across a optional module called financial physics, and so actually I bore some people, I guess, but for option pricing and buying and selling of options, which everyone understands what an option is, maybe not how to price it, but you could probably figure out the things that drive the value of an option. It's the maths is rooted in Brownian motion, which is how molecules move around in a gas. And so you can derive, Black and Scholes won the Nobel Prize for economics through deriving option pricing formula from first principles from physics. And so we did that from first principles all the way through to option pricing. I was like, this is amazing. And so I then decided
So
that
you're a nerd like us, I guess.
Much more of a nerd.
And so yeah, I left Oxford and I went to join Goldman Sachs, and I spent 10 years as a equity derivatives trader, mainly there, and then also a couple of other banks the last couple of years, and did that for 10 years, and then I left to move into sports. So I love football and soccer, and so I started modeling. Going down a rabbit hole here. Started modeling the maths of football and trying to understand the likelihood of certain things happening in certain events. And so created models and then expanded that with a partner to create a quant engineering business. So we built mathematical models, wrote real-time algorithms and bolted them onto engineering, and then built effectively trading systems and pricing systems, and we grew that business. And so I spent the last 10 years up to last year growing that business and selling it, and then growing the acquiring business. But since last year, I've now left, and I focus entirely on the thing that matters most in the world outside of family, which is fixing the money. And so, yeah, 10 years in derivatives, 10 years as an entrepreneur, and hopefully at least the next 10 years in solving this problem.
So, okay, so all that to say, like, you understand, I think you probably understand money and how money works, like on a pretty complex level.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Lynn Alden, and anybody who is eagle eyes or has spotted broken money on the shelf behind Mark, like, so I wouldn't be able to go to the level of detail and understanding all the pipes of the financial system. However, because they are incredibly esoteric. However, I think one of the strengths that I have is taking complex systems and simplifying them into something that can be explained and understood by everybody. Because you don't need to understand the minutiae to understand what is happening and why.
Yeah.
Right. And so in the video, the entire financial system is abstracted to a single big red button that people right? You can't abstract it to any greater degree than that, right? But that it shows you that you don't need to understand the nuts and bolts of the financial system if you just understand what happens when you press the big red button, because it's the things that happen that cause everything else downstream. And money in general is something that most people, as strange as it sounds, I hadn't really thought about money until 5 years ago. It's everywhere. It's always there. You never question like what is a good money and what is a bad money, because it's just you're forced to use it anyway. You have been forced to use it in the past, but for the very first time in all of human history, we have an alternative.
So Joe, So you say it all boils down to this big red button. Do the governments actually have this button? So you're obviously referencing the video. So if people haven't watched it, you've
Yeah.
got the island where people are shipwrecked on, and you've got two sides, and the one side doesn't have a big red button, so they can't, I guess, produce more money and fix their problems quickly, and the other side does. So, what about the money is actually broken? Like, if you say it boils down to a big red button, is that it's just the problem is someone can push a button?
Well, it's changed the characteristics of what the money is, and that can be the amount of money, i.e., they can create it for free, or they can change something else about the money, and that compromises your ability to be sovereign over your money. And this is the other big thing. For people listening, you want to test this out, just call your bank and say, I want to withdraw all my money, and see what happens.
I'm a little bit
Assuming you can actually get someone on the phone, right, which is not always guaranteed.
I think they'd be okay with me taking out $20. I mean,
all right. Well. I mean, it's probably not going to apply in every case, but the general idea is that you don't control your money. Like if you were thinking about money, imagine money didn't exist, and we said, all right, guys, let's come up with this thing called money. You'd go across a series of characteristics, one of which would be, well, surely we have to be able to hold this thing ourselves, right? Why would I create money that I need one of you two guys to hold for me? I mean, that makes no sense at all.
I mean, I would want to create that money.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, and you'll have the big red button next to you on the desk, right? You can change the rules whenever you want. But that's when somebody has exorbitant privilege in the system, that's what happens. They have this big red button and they can change it. They can change the rules. So if I'm forced to keep my money with you, and you give me an account and I say, you'll keep a track of the money I own, but you'll look after it, you can change the rules whenever you want. And I can only get my money with your permission. Oh, and Mark's your boss, so I can only get permission from you and Mark, right? Mark being the government in this scenario. So I don't own anything. I own something with at least 2 levels of permission required to access it: the bank and the government. And so anybody who thinks they're wealthy, they're not wealthy. Right? You cannot be wealthy if you require permission.
Just like on an average day, this isn't a problem, right? Like things are peaceful. You go about your business. You go to the bank. You can get your money. They're not going to ask you questions. But when things get,
I don't know what it's like in Canada. You can't get money in the bank in the UK without having problems. You go and try and withdraw £1,000. It's like a cavity
it's a big
search.
ordeal. Yeah.
even £1,000.
Yeah, I mean it's coming down all the time, and it's like why do you want it? Who are you giving it to? Can you prove? Do you have receipts, or do you have an invoice? Like all of this is like no, it's my money. But there's like KYC, AML, all of these nonsense things that are put in place to protect people, but really it's about constraining people's ability to control their own money and make their own decisions. Because if you remove all unilateral ability for people to do those things, then you fully control them. And you've seen this in Canada, right? I mean, we see what Canada is like from afar, so it's probably not right, but like you guys went fully tyrannical and like freezing people's accounts because they donated to the trucker project. I mean, this is like like a glimpse into the future. If you think things are bad now, when the central bank digital currency comes along and the digital ID, which I'm guessing has been floated in Canada recently because it has over here and it has in a bunch of other countries, it's very much a coordinated thing. Once you have a digital ID, you then get the central bank digital currency. And so not only can't you access the money in the bank, the money itself becomes programmable. So you'll have access to it, and it'll be sold to everybody for convenience. But they'll corrupt another aspect of the money, which is fungibility. I think most people have maybe even not even heard of fungibility. You tend not to even think about it because you take it for granted. It's like one Canadian dollar is the same as another Canadian dollar. And that's obvious. But when you move to a world of central bank digital currency, you can program it. And so they can give out stimulus checks that have to be spent by a certain period of time or else they expire. Or they can send you, or, they'll bring in a carbon allowance and you can only buy one flight a year. Or you've eaten too much red meat over X period of time and therefore you can't buy anymore. Or you've written something on social media that someone has deigned to be hate speech or whatever redefining of the words that they have created, which again are totally arbitrary by whoever's in power at any given point in time. It means that your entire life is controlled and it weaponizes the money against you. Right? So to think things are bad now, they're on the verge of getting a whole lot worse. A whole lot worse.
Yeah, it sounds like you're describing essentially slavery.
Yeah, I mean, we are not far from it at the moment. Right? We're not far, because what happens is you work for something, you pay, 50% tax. You then have to pay tax every time you spend. The 50% you do get to save, they slowly steal from you through inflation. And then when you die, they take it all from you. Right? Under the assets that you own, they can change the tax rates with the stroke of a pen. So you have a real estate portfolio, they've put the property taxes up arbitrarily. They'll bring in rules to say you can't own more than 2 rental properties or something like this over time. Like all of these things are, I'm not saying that exist in Canada or the UK, but you can just see it's at the whim of the government in charge to change the rules whenever they want. And so you're playing a game where you don't get to control the rules. You don't even know what the rules are going to be. And you're having to invest and make decisions for 30, 40 years. And so there's every chance that people who have bought a house now won't be able to even pass it down to their children when they retire or when they die, because the state will steal it. They'll steal it explicitly or implicitly through tax rates, through inheritance tax, all of these things. Like you have no control. And so slavery is, if you don't get paid anything, you're a slave. Right? If you work and be totally independent, you're not a slave. If you work and have to give 99% of everything you create to someone else, are you a slave? Pretty much.
Or you get to keep it, but it's not in your control necessarily, or not fully in your control.
Exactly. So it's not necessarily black and white. It's a sliding scale here. It's a sliding scale, and so we're definitely large part slave.
I think one of the things you said in your video was like, we feel like we're guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And everyone experiences this. You get the second degree on the phone with your bank, just trying to make a transfer to a friend or something like that. This happens. This is the world we live in, and it's the slow creep, because it wasn't like this 10 years ago. Definitely wasn't like this 20 years ago. Right? Think about what it's going to be like in 10 years' time. This is everything is going off a cliff, and it's going off a cliff because the money is broken. And it's the growth of the state. When the state has access to a big red button, they'll just press it. Issue more debt, never go bust. They create more problems in society. They therefore justify greater investment or capital investment back into society to try and fix things. We can fix it if we can invest properly. Right? And so the government just balloons and balloons and balloons because there's no constraint. There's no real world constraint because they can print as much money as they want. And so when there's no constraint to spend to the quantity of money, you can spend whatever you like, knowing you can always repay it. But on the surface, when you face the population, you say, we've got a deficit and we've got a debt. So we're going to have to raise the taxes. And we raise the taxes to temporarily fill the hole as we just print more money, because we don't need to raise the taxes at all. And so the consequence is the currency just gets destroyed. So the purchasing power of the Canadian dollar is going to zero. Just gradually over time. So you can't own the dollar. You can't own assets that are subject to permission, because they'll all get taken. And there's only one thing in the world you can own. That is, nobody can print and nobody can take off you. One.
Gold.
Potatoes.
Well, all right. I mean, I would say like on the
Well, because I'm just thinking a lot of people are probably on that wavelength, right? Like gold has historically been the thing.
Okay, but let's think about gold. Let's think about gold, because gold was my first thought as well, right? 5 years ago, when they're printing, insane amounts of money, the world is closed and stock markets are ripping new highs. It's like, where someone's clearly printed loads of money here. Where's that coming from? I went to gold, and this is also why gold is ripping now. Like, gold is at all-time highs, because it's limited by real-world energy. You can't print gold. It's become the de facto real-world money through free market competition around the world over time. But it wasn't good enough to be the money. And so gold is limited in supply above the ground, but it's close to infinite below the ground, right? We just can't access it. It's just not in circulation. But it grows at 2 to 3% a year, indefinitely. It's portable, sort of. You can take it round. It's durable. It lasts through time. It's identifiable, but you can't prove that a certain piece of gold is actually gold and not like gold-wrapped tungsten or something like that. Right? You can't send it on the internet. You can't buy something in the corner shop in gold. You can't get change in gold. You don't want to carry it around. It's a physical asset. So it outcompeted all the other monies, but it wasn't good enough to be the end solution. And so what happened is people started putting their gold in gold vaults and issuing paper receipts for it, because it's just much easier to hold the paper and give the paper to, exchangeable into gold in the vaults. And that's why we have paper currency today. That's why we have the dollar today. It was the easy representation of the gold money. Commerce. But then over time, people just forget it was ever connected to the gold. And if you can just print this paper costlessly, you just print more paper. And then eventually somebody comes to you and says, well, hang on, I don't believe you've got enough gold in the vaults to exchange the paper back for. And you go, oh yeah, we're breaking the convertibility to gold. And so now this is where we are. Like, all the currencies we have, they're not constrained by the real world. They're just paper that you can print for free. But gold still exists. Gold still trades. So the more paper they print, the less confidence people have in their ability to constrain future printing of their paper. Through sensible financial management means you just buy gold. Right, I'll go and buy the gold. This is why gold is spiking, because they don't want the paper currency. But then what happens? You buy the gold. What do you do with it? You keep it in the house, and then you start getting worried about it. Like, what if someone breaks in and steals the gold? So what do? You say, like, okay, well, I could spend a load of money on security, or I can go and put it in a gold vault along with everyone else's gold. And
Here we go again.
And what do? They give you a receipt for it, right? And so you've just got paper again. And so, what happened in 1930s in the US is that overnight they decide we're making gold illegal for the individual, and so you're not allowed to hold gold. So you have to hand it in, or if you're caught with it, it's a $10,000 fine or 10 years in prison. And $10,000 is like huge in the 30s. And so they don't confiscate it. but they give you a set of scenarios where you better hand it in or else, you're going to be in trouble, right? But you don't get a choice. Your gold is in the gold vault. The government called the gold vault and says we've put this law in. The gold vault just sign it over to the government. You don't have a choice. It wasn't yours. You had a piece of paper. Right? So gold, you absolutely don't own it. I mean, you can own a bit of jewelry, something like that, but try fleeing with that. Try using that in commerce. It's not going to happen. You can't take this stuff through an airport. Right? There's no way. You can't take your house. You can't take gold. You can't take physical assets. You are trapped. Right? So if you get pushed too far and you need to leave, you're starting again from zero, because everything's attached to the ground. Right? So when I say there's one asset in the world that you can own that no one can print and no one can take off you, there's absolutely only one. And that's Bitcoin. And this it should just be very, very clear. This is not financial advice. This is not me saying you should go out and buy Bitcoin. This is me saying you absolutely need to learn about Bitcoin. Absolutely need to learn about Bitcoin. Because once you've watched What's the Problem, you understand why we need Bitcoin, you're never going to see the world the same way again. And for the very first time, you'll feel like you have a path to actual sovereignty in your own life. You insulate yourself from the state. So when I say Bitcoin fixes this, and Bitcoin is for the separation of money and state, you can do that unilaterally. Right? Everyone can unilaterally do that. And when enough people have unilaterally done that, it happens for everybody. And this is why, in my view, it's inevitable. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it again. And then you start down a path to take self-sovereignty into your own life. Right? There's no chance of going back. And then you share it with other people. And then, eventually it drives decision-making on a macro scale. Because we vote for people who are pro-Bitcoin, who are going to protect our rights, who are going to push for smaller government. I've never met a Bitcoiner who thinks a bigger government's a good idea. Right? So these things resolve themselves if people just learn about Bitcoin.
But you're assuming, Joe, naive fellow you, that everybody wants that. Everybody wants sovereignty. Everybody wants their own control of their own money. When I don't think that's true, right? I watched.
I agree.
It was a media personality. I don't know, Joy Reid. So, anyways, somebody. It was like a video clip of her saying and framing this as a negative thing, that there are people out there. And mostly, I think she framed it around like white nationalists or right-wing MAGA, whatever. This is in the U.S. Who don't want to pay as little tax as possible, like just be left alone, and then pass on their inheritance to their children tax-free. And I'm like, yes, that's what I want. And then I realized like she's framing that as a negative thing.
Negative. Yeah.
And like that's how far we like. So we have your unreliable boyfriend now in power, Mark Carney, right? And like a lot of things that you've talked about, a lot of Canadians I think don't see. So you talked about the tyranny and freezing of the bank accounts and stuff, and yeah, from the outside vantage point, like crazy. And then there's a significant amount of Canadians who also looked at that. And, for me, that was a turning point as well, right? When bank accounts were frozen, just in how I viewed our government, et cetera. But like a lot of Canadians they're just like, wow, that was those crazy truckers, like whatever, right? It's like the pot in boiling water. So my long-winded point is like, not everybody sees that need and understands. They're like, no, just like Joe, let the government take care of things, because you don't really understand how the whole system works. I certainly don't understand it, and I just want them to, increase my benefits or give me a universal basic income or whatever, and like things will be fine then. Like, why are you going on about sovereignty and, like, are you want to build a cabin in the woods and live there with your guns? Like, what's wrong with you?
I mean, it doesn't sound like the worst thing, but that's not my desired outcome. But I think I'll say several things. Firstly, they came for my neighbor down the street, and I didn't say anything. Then they came for my next door neighbor. I didn't say anything. Then they came for me, and no one said anything. Like, we're at that stage, right? And it's gradual, and it's small things, but it's cumulative. And you never want a path to escape. You always want to, it's like, hedge when you can, not when you have to. Is, what I would say in the finance days, like, you don't want to be in a position where you're panicking and trying to do something. You be proactive now and you protect yourself. You understand what risks you are running and what the alternatives are. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I think this is more about the socialist world we now find ourselves in. In that, what happens when you leave people alone is you get capitalism. When people are free to operate and interact with each other and exchange goods and services free from arbitrary rules and regulations, you get a quality of life increasing for everybody. Because people compete on, and this is on a backdrop of perfect money. Okay, so money that can't be abused. People compete, and people can buy from anybody. And whenever you're buying anything, you're buying on a combination of price and quality. You want the highest quality at the lowest price. And if somebody is compromising on quality or putting the prices up, they'll get out competed and they'll go out of business. So what inevitably happens is prices go down forever and quality goes up forever. Right? And you get technological innovation. Now, when that happens, the productivity of society is accruing to the money. Right? If I hold the money, it buys more next year, not less this year. So think about the impact of that on society as a whole. It means even if you're not a productive person, if you save money, it becomes more valuable. Your quality of life is raised by the actions of everybody else. And this is why I say it's everyone acting in their own self-interest for the benefit of everybody else. You cannot beat a system like that. And this is capitalism. So capitalism is the most moral of systems. Now, unfortunately, we don't live there anymore. Because of access to the big red button, the state has been able to corrupt society to a degree that it rewards people with freshly printed money to not be productive. And so it undermines the productivity of society and puts more and more pressure on the productive members of society to try and pay the bills, to try and at least keep the appearance of the money printing as not insolvency. Right? More and more regulations, more and more taxes on the productive parts of society. But the government is elected because it gives free money to the less productive parts of society. Right? And by doing that, you make the productive parts of society under more and more pressure. So it makes it less productive. You're hampering the growth. And the natural outcome of that, you should just destroy it completely. And if you destroy it completely, then you're just in socialism and communism.
Well, I think the people that get squeezed drop into the people who need the handouts, and that increases the voter base, which further cements the control of the government, right?
Yeah, and the more the government gets involved in anything, the more they corrupt it. And then they'll point at the fact that the market isn't working properly as a rationale for getting more involved to fix it, which makes it even worse. So you spend more money on investment, add in more rules and regulations, destroy the free market even more, and they have to get involved again more. So we're on this slippery slope here. And so when you have commentators, I don't know who it was, I don't know what they said, but indicating that people just want to be left alone and pay less tax? Absolutely they do, because they're the productive people in society. Right? And people listening will know whether they are, super productive, not productive, completely unproductive people. Right? And everyone is different. It's a spectrum. Like we are not all Elon Musk. Right? And there are some people who are happy to sit around, do nothing, get paid, be down the pub all day, live on benefits, do all of these sorts of things. Different people want different things. But if you enable all of these things through the money printer, you gradually just erode the productive class within your society to the point where they just say no. They close their businesses, they walk away. Because you've destroyed their ability to continue to grow a business on solid foundations, because you've driven them into the ground on so many different fronts. And so, to bring it all the way back, that commentator probably says that from a position of moral high ground. And this is the thing, it is absolutely not the moral high ground. The moral high ground is capitalism. Socialism is stealing from people. It's stealing from people. It's taking some money from somebody else and giving it to a third party. You would not walk into your neighbor's house and take the silver out of their drawers and give it to the neighbor down the street. You just wouldn't do that. But that's what socialism is. But when you wrap it in, shouldn't we be caring about people, all of this stuff, it makes it sound like it's the moral high ground, but it's absolutely not caring about people. It's destroying society. If you care about people, you leave them alone, you empower them to succeed, and everybody benefits. That's the moral system. So we've gone down like a slightly different tangent, but this is the corrosion that we see in the West now, and it's going to end badly. It's going to end badly.
And would you say it's like the intent of governments or banks or leaders to go down this path? Because I just keep thinking, like, you're talking about the destruction of society and things deteriorating, and that is ultimately bad for everybody. So even if somebody, let's say, is well off, they have a lot of assets, right? They're kind of on the high end of the, like, they're maybe the closest to the money printer, and they're the one benefiting the most in society. Ultimately, they have to still live in a neighborhood amongst people who are, in distress or really, really upset, and the quality of services or products is going down. And, just try to go to a local event in your neighborhood, and, you just witness a whole bunch of depressed people. Like, are these, are the people in control of it aware of, like, this is where it's going, and they just want to milk it and enjoy it now? Or, like,
the closer you are to the government, the closer you are to the big red button. This is why why Wall Street is so powerful, the pharmaceutical industry is so powerful, the defense sector is so powerful, because you're either, your customer is the government, and they can print as much money as they want, and they can mandate the usage of your products, right? So you ask to be regulated, and you put up barriers of competition so that you can increase prices and reduce quality. Or you're ultimately underwritten by the government if something goes wrong, like Wall Street, and you're also protected through regulations. And so, there are absolutely insiders and outsiders here. But, I mean, it's a bit like, I would frame it a bit like Stalin, right? You've seen the photographs of Stalin where he gradually removes people from photographs. There'll be the same photograph and there's 4 people with Stalin, and then there'll be the same photograph and there's only 3 there, and then there's 2 because they've all been purged. It's like, okay, you may be on the benefiting side now, right? But as it deteriorates, you end up on the losing side. You may be benefiting from being able to acquire more assets and these sorts of things, but they're still inside the system. And so if the net just becomes closer, closer and closer and closer around you, then you can still lose. But what ultimately happens is these people end up buying gold. Right? Why do you think gold's going up so much? Right? there are certain people who understand what is happening, and it's in the government's interests not to educate the population as to the dangers of having a big red button. Because if people understood the dangers of having a big red button, they'd get a push to have it taken off them. Right? So you press the big red button to help reinforce the need for inflation and education around Keynesian economics, etc., etc., and rewarding people who back the system. But you can see it just ends up in a Stalin world. And so even I mean, you talked about assets. Even your portfolios, I mean, Canada's a slightly different extreme, the rapidity with which asset prices have gone up there for real estate. But most places around the world, even when you own those assets, you're trying just to protect yourself against the debasement, but you're still underperforming the debasement, because the money, you might be going up 8 to 10% a year in real estate value, but the money is also being printed at 8 to 10% a year. But then you've got to pay the costs of the asset, the upkeep of the asset. You've got to pay the tax on the income. And then when you sell it, you've got to pay the capital gains tax from where you bought it. It hasn't become any more productive. They've just printed money and said you've made it, so they then take another slug from you. And so even if you, on the surface, think you are benefiting from this, chances are you're not. You're just losing at a slower rate than the people who keep the money in the bank. And so I would frame the entire system as almost everybody is losing. It's a question of how rapidly you are losing. And it's a shrinking number of people sat right on top of the big red button who are benefiting from it. But ultimately, it's all getting washed onto the national balance sheet, which ends up just destroying the currency, for which everybody ultimately gets pays the price for.
Yeah, that's. I think that's a very optimistic note to end off on.
No. Yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard to talk about, to help people understand the problem unless you explain the problem, and problems tend not to be uplifting. But the flip side is, like, I would say I've never been more positive in my entire life as I am today. It would be utterly depressing if Bitcoin didn't exist. I mean, we'd be in a proper dystopian, we'd be hurtling towards dystopia if we didn't have Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is the solution for all of this. All of this. And anybody listening, please go and watch What's the Problem. Then go and start learning about Bitcoin, because it's one of the most important things you need to do.
It's the sly roundabout way.
Yeah.
That I think you quote Hayek, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of Hayek quotes in there. Yeah.
Oh, I love Selma Hayek.
Oh yeah, she's the best. Yeah.
It's Friedrich Hayek, folks. Friedrich.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, okay. We should wrap this up, Joe. I know you got to get going. And, but, as Christians, I got to put a plug in that we see the problem. And, the problem is that we don't have truth anymore in society. I think Bitcoiners would agree with that. And so you're advocating a return to truth in money.
Yep.
When you do that, our economic problems certainly get better. So for us, we're saying return to the capital T truth, and that should inform the problems. And that's why we love Bitcoin, because, as you said, it's a moral solution. It's a moral money. The Bible talks about just weights and measures, and that's what Bitcoin is, just weights and measures. So if you're a Christian, you should be excited about Bitcoin, because that returns us to, it's not the solution for all things, but in terms of our economic situation on earth and ordering a society, because money is half of every transaction, we need to have that sorted out. So, Joe, I'll give you the final word, and tell us where people can find you and where they can find the video.
You can find the video at whatstheproblem.org. You probably could have guessed that URL. And the video's there, and there's also a series of additional follow-on videos and books and podcasts that will help you broaden out the picture of understanding about Bitcoin, because the video is not about Bitcoin. It's just helping you get to the starting line with wanting to learn about Bitcoin. Don't buy Bitcoin. Learn about it. That's all I'm asking people, encouraging people to do. And yeah, I mean, my handle's at SatmoJoe on X. If you're there, I'm not on Facebook and these other platforms. And I would say, like, I don't get paid for any of this. This is just me trying to help people connect the dots. That's it. And so you can drop me a message or something via the website if you're interested. But yeah, thanks very much for having me on, guys. As I said before I came on, I think there's a lot of Christians and Bitcoin. There is a lot of overlap there in terms of rationale and basis for wanting to pursue truth and having a solid foundation that you can build your life upon. It's just completely missing in the physical world right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Brent, any final words of wisdom?
I don't have any wisdom yet, Mark. I'm not as old as you, so
you'll get there.
I would agree, though. We want people to study this. Just my own personal experience, like, it is a profound discovery. It's a one-way street, like you said, Joe. Like, once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you see it everywhere. And I definitely. I've heard that story kind of from other people too. Like, hey, I've done the research, and wow, like, I look at the world a lot differently. So yeah. One-way street.
Okay. Well, thank you, Joe, for taking the time. We appreciate it. I've enjoyed our conversation. Folks, you can check him out. Check out whatstheproblem.org, at SatmoJoe on Twitter to follow him. And until next time,
steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
If you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To learn more about the show, head on over to twostewards.ca and explore our free resources. To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We will see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.
Nailed it.